Now, before we get into this, I do want to say that I think, for the most part, the changes made in Season of Loot Reborn, Missing 1685654 Season Begin text are fantastic. Like, overall, completely positive, enhancing the Diablo 4 experience to a level it has never been close to before. Season 4 is going to be by far the most enjoyable this game has ever been, and it's not even close. Essentially, it's finally about to actually release. It only took it like a year. But there is still a few issues that I want to talk about, and the eagle-eyed amongst you might already have a guess at perhaps one of them from just this menu. In any case, I'm going to structure this thusly. The first things I talk about, I think, are really important and should be changed, to the point where Season 4 will just be worse because of them not being changed. Whereas later and later as we go, the last things I talk about, I don't think the season will be any worse if they're not changed, but I do think they'll be better, but they're not super important. So without further ado then, let's begin with this little tab here, with all our various currencies. For the most part, all is well, but this, veiled crystals, now, it's hard to test on PTR because we're getting boosted to 100, we're getting given loads of them, and actually farming them is kind of a pain when you could just make another level 100 character that has loads of veiled crystals, put all your items across, and then use them for your various needs. The thing is, though, it is a problem at its current level of cost. And Blizzard are aware of that. Before we go any further, they have posted, they're looking into it, it's a common complaint, and it's a common complaint for a reason. Now, I do believe that it is more severe on the PTR by the nature of its design than it will be in actual Season 4, but I do think for anyone who is interested in trying more than just one build, will kind of keep slamming into a wall of I just do not have the veiled crystals to try this build. The general re-rolling costs of your affixes at the occultist is probably fine, though of course it does start to ramp up very quickly when you just keep not getting the affix that you want, especially now, ironically, you are more likely to get the one that you want, so you're more likely to keep trying until you do so, as opposed to just accepting a good enough one, which I think happened a lot in the previous system. Then you've got the tempering, which is another massive sink of them. If you're over here trying to get the perfect temper over and over again, using all 6 attempts on both slots, that's a potential of 12 tempers per piece of gear per build, which is 240 crystals per piece of gear per build. You can see how that can add up quickly. And then you've got kind of the one that I think is the biggest issue, which is simply applying your codex powers. Now that it costs 150 to do a weapon, and the fact that we keep upgrading, of course, our codex powers as we get better versions salvaged in the new fantastic aspect locker, you're going to keep upgrading and replacing your actual weapon and your other pieces as you go, which is going to be an absolute black hole of veiled crystals. Even a more basic defensive power, you're still doing 75 a pop. So I kind of do worry about this. I also worry about masterworking costs, and in that form, it actually becomes gold that might start being a worry. And you might think that that's ridiculous, but the thing is, the veiled crystal cost is minor, but the actual obdusite and the more advanced material cost gets incredibly high. And when you start doing high tier pits, because why wouldn't you do the pit that you're most capable of doing, and the resource cost goes up and up and up, and then you start converting your neathiron into ingolith, then each time it's 250k. And you need to do it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times over the course of the season, so even with Whispers rewarding millions of gold, it kind of is going to fall apart if that's not addressed. Now, this isn't like the craziest thing in the world, and it says a lot that this is probably the biggest thing that I can point to that might take the wind out of the sails of Season 4, but the bottom line here is I just think if you are someone that's going to change builds a lot and try new builds a lot, which in Season 4 is going to happen more than ever with weapon tempering, the new uniques, the new systems, there is so many more builds for every single class than there has ever been, I think raw resource farming time is going to creep into the tedious boredom chore level past the sort of just I'm playing the game for fun and getting enough resources. So that is definitely something to mention. Then I want to go on to simply loadouts. I just said it, we are going to have more builds per class than we have ever had before. So the fact that we don't have loadouts is going to kind of be irritating. Now, of course, I am perhaps a unique case when it comes to this. Not literally unique, there's other content creators too, lots of very good ones, but I make a lot of builds. I will make my perfected version of every sorcerer build in Season 4, and I will be inventing a lot of new unique ones too, and that's a lot to keep track of. A lot of gear sets, which is definitely made easier by now not having to have your stash filled with just aspects. It can just be gear that is good that you want to keep, thank God. But we are going to end up in a situation where it's going to be really irritating keeping track of and swapping back and forth between all of your builds, depending on how you're feeling that day. And beyond that, depending on the type of content, we have got a really healthy variety of endgame content now, pushing Pit to tier 200, doing the new Torment Uber bosses. You've got open world stuff like new Helltide, the usual nightmare dungeons, and so on and so forth. PvP if you're into that for some, I don't know, masochistic reason. And for all of these activities, a lot of classes have different builds that do excel. So you're going to want to swap between them at the click of a button, and then that's all well and good, as opposed to just go through all your gear, find all the gear for that build, and then redo all your points, redo all your paragon, and get everything online again, update your aspects, yada yada. It might get a little bit frustrating, and given that we do have the inbuilt wardrobe system that does remember your layered gear, it doesn't seem a huge stretch to get something that can remember your actual gear and swap everything along with it. We've had it before in Diablo games, so it's a little bit sad that we still don't have it. Then I want to talk class balance. This is something I don't like going into too hugely, but I think it's something that has kind of come up a little bit more keenly now we have the new tempering system. So when we have tempering, right, we have this category, your weapons. This is where all the build-making cool stuff is. Let's define it as that. Your chance to cast twice, or sizes for your sorcerers, a lot of other classes have your sizes, all the little unique effects that make things that either massively enhance or define a build, or can create a new build by itself, are here. And if I'm using a two-handed weapon as a sorcerer, I get one of them, a single one, that's it, and we're done. Yes, I can use a one-handed focus, but if I need a staff for the build, then we're at 1. Even with a one-handed focus, we're only at 2. Imagine if I needed a unique staff, like Lam Asen, then I couldn't have any of the cool new weapon tempering. That's really sad. And yes, you might say, well, I mean, that's a choice you have to make, a unique staff or a weapon tempering. You can't have your cake and eat it too, except, well, some classes can. I'm looking at you, Barbarian. With 4 weapons equipped, not only do you get more aspects than everyone else, you also get to have 4 separate goddamn weapon tempers. And yes, I hear what you're saying. Well, that's, the point of being a barbarian, and to a lesser extent rogue. They get extra weapons, that's a thing. And yes, it is a thing. But now we have weapon tempering, it's starting to be too big of a gap. Barbarian has been the best class through Season 3 for the most part. Sorceress had its moments, but Barbarian is there. And it is by far the best class in the PTR. And the reason for that, outside of probably terribly imbalanced Dust Devils is they get to just stack power on power and power, because the biggest thing that adds power to your builds are offensive aspects, uniques, and now weapon tempering. And Barbarian get more of all of those things, leaving Sorcerer, Necro, and Druid kinda behind. I would love it if, from this new system, to really let tempering shine, Druid, Necro, and Sorcerer got to have a two-handed staff equipped, and at the same time, a wand and focus equipped. You choose which one you're casting with, so that defines your core, either lucky hit chance or, for example, damage to crowd-controlled enemies, the core base affix, and it also defines your attacks per second, but other than that, you get the 3 aspects, 3 weapon tempers, 3 potential weapon unique slots, and so on and so forth, kind of universally equalizing the classes when it comes to weapon power. Barbarian still gets 1 more in that case, and it still stays its unique thing, but I think it would do a lot for both not just power balance, but build diversity too, with how exciting weapon tempering actually is. It's just ultimately kind of a shame that 3 classes at most can have 2, and in a lot of cases will just be sat on 1 for any two-handed staff using builds. And as I say, if you're using a unique weapon, well then forget about interacting with this system at all. But I don't want to just label it as weapon and tempering options. I think generally, of course it's PTR, there are things that are broken, but talking of broken, Necro has a unique that is literally broken. It procs off itself repeatedly, and it shouldn't do, and it obliterates everything, and it's hilarious, but Necro is still nowhere near the best class in the PTR because of just how busted Barbarian is. So I do think there is a certain element there that would be nice, and I still think some classes do need a few little tweaks, like Sorceress still really should have a 3rd enchantment slot for some much needed variety, both in power spread and build choices. Past that then, I want to talk about the Torment bosses, the level 200 bosses, and by extension Uber Uniques. Simply, I just think they should be a little bit more rewarding. We are firmly into the territory of, I just think this would be nice, it's not hugely important, doesn't matter if it gets changed, but it would be nice territory, just for context. That said, you farm a bajillion extra boss summon materials to summon the 200 Torment boss, you still kind of obliterate it in peak min-max builds now, so the challenge is a little bit anticlimactic, but then it rewards sort of at best 4 times the rewards the regular boss does, despite costing 5 times the materials and some extra materials, so that's a little bit sad. Now, from testing, it does seem like the Torment bosses have a higher chance of greater affixes, and supposedly Uber Duriel Torment and Uber Andariel Torment have a higher chance of Uber Uniques, so those 2 specifically might well be worth, but the other ones, it kind of takes the shine off them a little bit, and bottom line, I just think they should drop more better stuff in general, as it should be encouraging to, I can either fight Grigor 5 times, or I can do Uber Grigor once, Torment level, I should choose the Torment level once. That should feel better than just doing the base one and one-shotting it 5 times, at least in my opinion. And beyond that, when it comes to the Torment bosses, and how when you kill your first one of a season, you will get yourself a spark for an Uber unique. That's really cool, but it's also really lame that it's just the 1 spark for your first kill no matter which one it is. I really think that either A, every first kill of a season should give you a spark, and then you're guaranteed 1.5-ish Uber uniques by just going through them all, and that's a cool little journey to go on. I'm going to start the season, I'm going to get powerful, I'm going to get in a good build, I'm going to farm the materials, the extra materials to summon each boss at Torment, I'm going to go through them one by one, beat that challenge, and then get the handful of sparks so I can at least choose my 1 guaranteed Uber for the season that I know isn't going to be RNG, and then I can have that, and then have a few sparks left over, and now if I want more, I can farm them properly. I think that would be a really nice little goal journey to go on for everyone, and it would let them balance endgame activities around 1 Uber unique and make them properly challenging as a result, even with the 1 Uber unique, as opposed to kind of getting trivialized by people wearing Uber uniques. I think having that little guaranteed carrot is a nice touch, such, and I think the Resplendent Spark system is certainly a huge step in the right direction. It's nice that it got changed to 4, but it's still a little bit out there. Having 4 Uber Uniques drop, while a lot more common now through all the extra systems, is still going to take a bit, and you're still giving up 4 Uber Uniques that are all still good to get your ideal 1, which can feel a little bit sad. So I definitely think the Spark should be 1 per Torment boss per season, and then you've got an actual definitive Uber Unique goal in mind, and that's quite a cool little build checklist to do each season. Then we get to my last little thing, which is something that will keep coming up until it happens, but ironically something I think that is less needed than it's ever been, and that's simply a loot filter. With the refining of affixes, the fact that legendaries are all that matter as they have an extra affix, there is less loot dropping but it's of higher quality, all of that good stuff, it does make the need for a loot filter less, especially as you want to pick everything up to salvage it, though that in itself is, you know, a lot of cycling through your inventories, but it would be nice if you're at a point where you don't care about materials, you just want the perfect item to really refine your build, to be able to just set a selection of affixes that's all you see as you blast through things. Especially in Helltide, with how much it pours loot into your inventory, it would really be the cherry on the beautiful cake that Diablo is finally becoming. There's not really much to go into or say there, it's just, hey, it will always be a nice addition to have a loot filter, despite it being less needed than it was. I'm still gonna advocate for it. So, that's currently where I'm at. Those are my 5 rough category things that I think are worth thinking about. My feedback for the PTR after doing a lot of, well, everything within it, and I would love to know your thoughts on everything I've talked about too. But now then, like if you enjoyed this, subscribe, hit the bell for more, consider supporting the future of the channel on Patreon down below, and until we meet again, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.